To understand the boot process, we need to understand the terminology that Microsoft uses for the partitions. And although this seems backwards, this is the way they did it. The system partition is the active partition, and the system partition contains all the files that are necessary to boot Windows 2000 in the root directory. The boot partition contains the main Windows 2000 directory and usually the page file, which is used for virtual memory. So in other words, the system partition contains the files that are required to boot Windows 2000. The boot partition contains the files that are required to run the operating system. And although that seems backwards, it's definitely worth remembering. The boot process itself is very systematic and much like Windows NT. Let's take a look at the boot process step by step. System BIOS performs the power on self-test and turns to the master boot record on a hard drive to find an operating system. The master boot record looks to the Bootstrap loader program in the boot sector of the active partition. The Bootstrap loader program executes NTLDR, which is the Windows 2000 boot loader program. NTLDR reads the boot.ini and provides the bootloader menu for a dual booting system. NTLDR executes ntdetect.com to detect and configure the hardware that's present. And then it reads the information from the registry about all the device drivers, and it loads any device drivers that are needed. Then NTLDR loads the Windows 2000 kernel, including the HAL.dll, that's the hardware abstraction layer, and the NTOS kernel.exe files. And then it passes control to the NTOS kernel.exe and the kernel controlling module. So it's much like NT4.0, whereas NT Loader takes over and continues the installation. If we are troubleshooting the boot process, we should follow some simple guidelines. First of all, try the simple things first. In other words, maybe restart. Determine at what point in the boot process the system fails. We'll talk about some tools that we can use to do that. And then use a troubleshooting tool like the Advanced Options menu, Recovery Console, and Emergency Startup Disk. So we'll talk about some tools that are provided in Windows 2000 to help troubleshoot the boot process